trade. Not Mr. I'm Dr. Ousman Gajigo. I mean, you have earned the name, so I cannot belittle the man, with all due respect. On today's program, for all of those who are watching us from outside the Gambia and anywhere, just to make sure that you can also be part of this conversation. To come in if you have any questions, make sure you send it. Today, as I was saying, for those who probably didn't catch this, a very special guest here with us. He's a Gambian. Can I say you're a diaspora as well, Gambian? Because you're based in the Gambia.
Yes.
Dr. Gajigo, you also worked in, did you work in ADB, if I'm not mistaken, Development Bank. He's a doctor. He's been writing a lot of commentary about the economy, the cement industry. Currently, the backlog which some vehicles are faced at the borders, and numerous other issues, agriculture, and many other things. But first of all, I would like for our guest to get to know who is Mr. Gajigo, put a face to the name, and to get to know who this man is, because even me, actually, this is the first time we've met in person.
Yes. I attended Nusrat High School and a bit of Gambia High before doing my tertiary education in the US. Yeah, so I worked outside for quite a bit before returning to the Gambia. Yeah, so I first came, except for a brief period, a few years back when I returned to Abidjan, but since to develop the agricultural sector, so in a modern way. In a modern way. So when you talk about the economy and the agriculture and all of that, involved in it. Yeah. So it's something that I appreciate. It's to the Gambian economy.
Okay, fantastic. Before we come into to highlight, we would not be doing justice to the show without highlighting the issue of Ibrahim Madiba. Ibrahim Madiba, the UDP supporter, and another gentleman, Bakari Silla, were charges according to the police. And today the latest information is that Ibrahim Madiba was arraigned in court, and we will be following that to get the latest news. Ibrahim Madiba is a supporter of the United Democratic Party, of course, alongside Mr. Silla. The government is that there have been some very incendiary statements, if I could say, or very hostile statements between the president, Adama Barrow. It all started sometime a week or so back when the president made some comments during his tour on the opening of his regional NPP bureaus, where the president made some statements. Of course, the most popular one everybody is talking about is the NAR, boutique in NAR. But the president also made some statements which state that if the opposition were to insult them, the NPP supporters, they should be ready to fight, and that they had the backing of high up officials. So, which was a statement that the president made, and in response to the president's statement, and in his response, he did state that his party would be ready to use violence to meet violence. And these two topics, they would hope that they would lead us into prosperity, into development, into peace and stability country right now. So it's something which we certainly, I don't know whether you'd want to have any comments about that, because obviously as our country, political stability is very important, and here we have the president, coming up with fighting talk, as well as to meet that fight with fighting, with violence.
No, it's, I'm glad it's there, which means, so to the extent that it is necessary, only the police or something, for instance, are allowed to be armed and, in the course of doing their duty, only if necessary, use that violence, using those powers, not in the interest of law enforcement, but in a partisan way. It is actually using this language, but let's be very clear about where the responsibility and the fault lies. It was started, the Minister of Interior, that is in charge of law enforcement, is reporting to you. You bear the responsibility of addressing that. you know, to the extent that you're talking about violence, you should talk about how you are going to say, because this was not a proper arrest. This is a partisan activity. You know, so obviously that man is going to come out to defend his supporter. So, you know, it's unfortunate that the conversation has season where the government, the president is talking about his policies. The opposition parties are talking about their competing policies. Where citizens can be rest assured that, okay, we will have...
in the US, Guy Nako, he's my boss there. Demba, welcome to the show. It's been such a long time we've not had you. Of course, when you are here in town, you are here with us. That was Mr. Gajigo. We were just talking economy, or which is what we want to do. We had to talk about the political rhetoric between the president and his main political opponent, Ousainou Darboe. And what's your general, you know, feel about it? Ousainou Darboe also should, you know, have refrained a little bit more.
Why?
That's good. Flex, yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, both leaders are supposed to be restrained or supposed to restrain themselves when it comes to the national issues, right?
Yes.
But let's look at who instigated this. Right now, the president is the leader of the country. He's not only the leader of NPP, he is the leader of the country. He has ceased to be the leader of NPP at this point until elections again. The president goes around insulting elderly people, instigating his supporters, you know, to go after other people, and then all of a sudden we see, you know, with the president. And this is the same president that was just calling for dialogue just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, the contradictions of calling for a dialogue and then also turning around and calling your supporters that you are in charge of the government, they failed in this. You know, I mean, he's on a technical tour of the country. He's supposed to talk about the life of the people and not the politics. This is a taxpayer's, you know, trip. He's supposed to exclusively talk about what is affecting our people, especially the farmers, with the farming season being on the way. So, I mean, obviously, if I actually, my advocacy was that all the political parties were supposed to come together and call a press conference, because this is not supposed to be between the UDP and NPP. This is a national issue. It's a national issue. Today is Ibrahim Adiba who's arrested. Tomorrow it could be me, it could be you. It could be, you know, it could be, you know, Mr. Gajigo, it could be anybody else. So this is not a partisan issue. The dialogue is supposed to call this issue after. They're supposed to, you know, I mean, Mr. Jai and others are supposed to really call the president to caution. The Human Rights Commission intervene and caution the president. He's the one that is instigating this.
Interesting. Thank you so much. That was Demba Balde. Demba, please follow us online. We will definitely bring you back in again. That concludes most of the news round which we wanted to do, but we still have some very important news which we also feel like we need to bring. Today, there was a press conference which was... But in this press conference, we also had the Minister of Information present, and it was a very fiery press conference. Honorable Ahmad Ba, he said he listens to this program, and he had some choice words for our program. Let's see if you can listen to some of my voice is a bit faint, but as always, get ready, brace yourself. Ahmad Ba is going to, the voice that you will be hearing, he has some choice words for us. Let's listen to what Ahmad Ba has to say.
That's what is important. And let me tell you, I received a letter, civil servant for our country. When the minister can just call, can we give you this land? And I said, look, that's what we did together, all of us. For the, and you can roll it as they will roll out the first draft of the policy. Conflict petroleum. So they will just take a very concise, generalized system.
Okay, this is the right part.
Will they be it has to be a decision, collective decision, need to be delved into, serve as a deterrent for tomorrow. I can guarantee you that something.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Taylor, my question, sir, is that...
Taylor of this West Coast Radio.
I'm on
yeah, I listen to you sometimes. With so many misinformation of some of your things about God.
Honorable Ahmad Bah, highlighting that he listens to this program, Straight Talk, and he hears a number of misinformation that we come up with in the program. And I told him that, Minister Bah, people can call, you can highlight, but that kind of comment would not stop me from asking the question that the director will be reprimanded of lands.
He's retired.
Okay. However, you never talked about the minister in the media. Right?
Yes, selected media houses.
Thank you. So
not to everybody, not to everybody.
So those media houses, how many media houses?
I go and ask them, they'll tell you.
I kept asking questions.
Minister, they will tell you.
And my last question is about the missing document.
Not only that one, there are a lot of missing files there. So many titles they have filtered there. They are computerized.
My question.
Yes.
This is why I'm asking, because this government has had a plan to do digitalization since the...
With the World Bank stresses, everybody stresses, there is no compromise about that. It will be done. Part of this policy. It will be done. Rest assured.
So this year or next year?
April 2025. About that. Next year.
There you have it. That was the Minister of Lands and myself. And we will not be faced to ask questions. We're inviting the minister. And scandal.
Okay.
Which the government is finally concluded the investigation. And that they are going to take some action against those who have been found wanting. And there I was pushing the man, which probably, of course, you haven't heard, that they are going to reprimand the director of planning. And I was like thinking, the minister gave approval without environmental assessment. Environmental impact assessment being done. Which I don't even understand. How can the minister not be the first one to be reprimanded, which was my first question, and then a number of other questions. So then the next thing we'll talk about cement. But for now, just I thought it would be interesting. It'd be fair for my listeners to hear some of the criticism we get and the way we do our work in the face of criticism to get information. What do you think about the response of the minister?
When I think about, you can even see from the way that he's, is trying to respond to the question, even without listening to the question, he wasn't taking it seriously. And in a situation like this, where you're doing a national press conference, something that is not done frequently, people are going to be tuning in to learn a lot. It is important to definitely, give respect where it is due. Listen to the questions first and then give a serious answer. So it's a bit, if your government is serious about accountability, serious to the extent that they are going to do an investigation. The key about investigation, of course, you assign responsibility or culpability, and then you take actions and let there be consequences. The idea is, those that are involved, they take responsibility. And in this issue, if you really are serious about taking responsibility, why would you stop at the director of planning? Because lease documents have to be signed by the minister.
Yes.
The systems are in place and the processes are followed. So if it's sort of like the fisheries case where you had Dr. Bamba, being prosecuted, convicted. Of course, he was released with a little bit later, but there was no real desire to actually for there to be responsibility taken, because so in this particular case, I think your point is quite valid here. If you are serious about taking responsibility, learning from experience and making sure the problem is not repeated again, then it has to go to the level of the minister.
It has to go to the level of the minister. This is what we were trying to highlight. But of course, we will see what comes out of it. The recommendations are out. The minister is not recommended, which includes reprimanding the director. Minister Bah, we are here on Straight Talk. Please come and talk with us. I will certainly give him the space, and I'll give him all the due accord that he deserves as a minister, with all due respect. And I actually, one thing I feel Ahmad Bah does try, it's difficult to say, but he does respond in a way, the way he wants to respond, which, as you said, is Ahmad Bah's way. We are going to go now deep into the economy, the state of the economy, and for the first topic, is also coming from the press conference. The cement. Minister of Information highlighted the Ministry of Trade press conference, press release, which they issued just yesterday. And we've got the minister here, his voice. This was issued just today, the voice that is, but the press release was published yesterday. Let's listen to the Minister of Information, Dr. Ismaila Cisse.
Sorry, Minister of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment. Now the ministry wishes to inform the public that there is enough cement in the country. I repeat, they want to inform the public that there is enough cement in the country, far more than the national demand requires. That as of today or yesterday, the 4th of June 2024, the 3 companies that produce or bag cement in the Gambia, that is for Jar Multi Industries, otherwise known as Jar Cement, currently they have 19,000 metric tons of cement in stock. By mid-June, they will increase this volume to 29,000 metric tons. And by the end of June, they will further increase this stock to 36,660 metric tons. And in the first week of July, they will have 39,000 metric tons. Now for Gasem Limited, they currently have 6,500 metric tons of cement in stock. And by the 15th of June, they will have 15,000 metric tons of cement in stock. Salam currently has 70,200 metric tons in stock. Furthermore, the ministry also wants to inform the public and retailers of cement, in particular the wholesale price of cement by local factories have not changed since the introduction of the measure, the policy which was introduced to pay 180 in tax at the border. That the wholesale price of 42.5 R of cement at Jar Multi Industries remains at $335 per 50 kilogram bag, and for wholesale price of 32.5 R of cement from Salam is $330 per bag. The ministry wishes to reiterate that the quality of local cement is consistent with international standards. The ministry therefore calls on all importers, distributors and retailers as well as all other stakeholders to directly contact the factories and take advantage of the opportunities created by the cement value chain to support their business and livelihoods. The ministry also further wishes to inform the public that yesterday the ministry had a meeting with the Cement Importers Association. The cement importers are those who import cement from Senegal, and currently their trucks are stranded at the border. They had a meeting yesterday with the ministry and the minister, and they are meeting today. And the ministry wishes to inform you that they are hopeful that there will be a favorable outcome from that meeting, which they inform the government public either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. But they wish to confirm that the meeting was very successful and there will be a very favorable outcome, favorable to both the Gambian government, the cement importers, and the Gambian population at large. The second.
That was the statement from the Minister of Information relaying the updates from the cement blockade that the government has put through this increases of duties or imports or tax or whichever way they try to spin it. So what's your reaction? You have been writing and you have been following the issue of cement in this country for some time now. What you are hearing from the minister. Of course, this is
cement factory.
Okay.
In the Gambia.
What do we have then?
We have bagging facilities. There is no cement production in the Gambia. They are solely and exclusively bagging operations. Something I remember I had a direct conversation with one of the permanent secretaries at the Ministry of Industry. You have been told by Jar Oil and others and Gasem and Salam, there is no cement manufacturing in the Gambia. Some carbonate limestone. You need to have a large quantity of that. And number two, if you go to any country that has cement factory, let me give an example. Suppose you have a silicon, let's say, a limestone deposit.
Yes.
In a place like Biam, for instance.
Yes.
You cannot build a factory in Kanifing, because transporting the limestone, even from a place like Biam, all the way to Kanifing, would make the cost so high that it will not be a commercially viable enterprise. The reason being, limestone is a high volume, low value product. And whenever you have a high volume, low, they buy mainly Spain and Portugal. Because of that, increases their cost of cement relative to cement that is coming from Senegal. And because the cement coming from a country like Spain compete cost-wise from cement coming from Senegal. So basically, these companies, they have to, the only way they can compete with cement that is coming from Senegal, importers. Yes. Now, if you are a government that is trying to be progressive, who should you be assisting more? The small-scale guys or the big multinational company by Gambian standard, which is Jar Oil, Salam, and Gassem. I also heard the last time the manager of Jar Oil claiming falsely that the government, like Gassem and others, they have SIC certificate, which is special investment certificate, which makes them basically not pay importers, despite their size, despite the scale of their operation, they don't pay a large amount of tax. While the small,
because of they charge them at the per bag.
Because
now they are making it up to 180.
The best is a punitive tax. This is a tax that is designed to stop the business killing.
Yes.
Because if it is not the case, they would have crossed. But right now, if you go to Kerai at the border in Farafenni, you will see a long line of trucks get in, because the government basically, put a tax high enough, you will kill the business.
Of course.
And that is the goal here. This is not the first time Jar Oil has done this. A couple of us fought hard against it, and the government backed down. They waited until there's a new minister again, and then they are trying out the same tactic again. So last time, they used this argument that they had a factory. That was the main argument. And when it was pointed out, and I remember pointing this out to the permanent secretary at the time, that you guys are sitting in your offices believing lies that we have cement factories. I said, if you have a cement factory, if it's even 15 kilometers away, nobody should tell you. You would know. The sort of dust it creates and activities, nobody will tell you. You will know there's a cement factory. And if you do your homework, you will know that it is not possible to have cement factory here because we don't have...
At the expense of the small scale.
Yes. But who is the real victim here? The real victim are Gambians. Let me give you a few examples. I myself am doing a construction as we speak. It got delayed for 2 weeks in URR because of somebody who was helping a community in Waso in terms of building, it's an internal reservoir where the water from the bowl can... These 3 bulk companies can only meet 60% of the demand in the country. Number one. Number two, when people are buying cement, they don't go to Jar Oil, they don't go to Gassem itself, they don't go to...
so-called factories.
On its decentralized nature. So that any shop, can go to any wholesaler. And then this
change in prices as somebody who is perhaps involved in some construction activity?
Yeah, right now, been following the price closely. It's just like when there is a shortage of food and people are about to starve, you don't even care about the price of bag of rice.
Whatever
they charge, you will eat it. So, right now, the rainy season is approaching. Of all the time, the government could have engaged in such a ill season beginning where poor Gambians are desperate to finish their half-completed buildings before the rains come. And you engage. Of all the times you could have done this, maybe even early in the year to allow time for people to adjust. These people didn't think about the impact on ordinary Gambians. They did this just before rain season. And therefore, even the slightest increase in price or the slightest disruption in supply is going to be catastrophic for some of them. You know, so this is how you really know whether you have a government that is really focused on the welfare of the people. So the key points I want to stress to the listeners here is that the level of incompetence we have in the government is mind-boggling. Nobody at the level of minister or permanent secretary in the Gambia today should believe that we have a factory, and that lie is a lie. That lie, at ADB, African Development Bank has financed cement factories in many countries. I've been involved in one major one in Democratic Republic of Congo. I know what is involved in cement production. Vegetable oil, when it's coming in the Gambia, most of the time it comes in a big bulk bag and later is put in smaller drums. Do we say that we have oil manufacturing here? We don't say that.
Okay.
If you cannot use that argument for vegetable oil or for palm oil, how can you use that for cement?
For cement, indeed.
In fact, the only time you can add a little bit of activity to cement is when you have clinker. So basically, when cement is processed, you bring it to the level of clinker. Clinker is a material where it is like 99% processed. The only thing is just adding one minor additive to make it cement and bag it. That's the only thing you can do. But vast majority of the time here in the Gambia is simple bagging. They come in bulk. So we don't have cement and the small scale importers from Senegal are doing the same thing. The only difference is the scale. Another difference is that Jar Oil, for reasons that are business related for his own operations, they are bringing their cement from places like Spain and Portugal, as opposed to bringing it from Senegal. So because of their own choice to bring cement from a long distance, they have a higher cost. Now, instead of sitting down and thinking of as a business, let me reduce my cost in a legitimate way, they went, and look, there's a lot of bribery involved here, let's be frank. Going around basically, and these rumors have been going on, government officers are not going to go and help, So, Jar Oil, instead of finding ways of lowering their cost, they decided, okay, let's go and pressure the government and tell them false stories, and then let them go and then weaken our competition by increasing their prices. If you are going to put that price on cement coming from Senegal, why don't you put it on cement coming from Spain and Portugal? What about if Senegal retaliates against some things we are selling there? Have you thought about what impact that will have on the economy?
That's a very important question. They did mention that they would actually sit with the government of the Minister of Trade. The two Minister of Trades are supposed to sit down and squash this. But we want to move on to the next topic. I have my colleague Demba Balde on the line, and we've been talking about a number of things. I have Demba Balde is on the line. We'll try and see if we can get Demba. We were talking about a number of issues. Of course, we had the audio from Ahmad Bah, and then obviously we came and we talked, we highlighted the audio from Minister of Information. Of course, his statement was in regard to the Minister of Trade. Of course, they are still going to have trucks there. Demba, I don't know if you were following the program. Thank you so much. What's your reaction to this issue? The government says we have enough demand, enough to take care of the demand here in the Gambia. So they are protecting Gambian factories, if I can use my two fingers to signify quotations. Demba, what's your reaction to this?
Yeah, they have no statistics or no data to back up their assumption. Construction is one of the major economic drivers in the Gambia. And the government need to recognize this. This is where you need to really prioritize your investments. Instead of the government subsidizing some of these businessmen who goes around, don't pay much taxes and all that. Why can't we invest that money? Flex, they just bought 100 vehicles, brand new vehicles, for a 2-day summit. How much is that? $150,000 each. Calculate that and see if you can invest that into working with the private sector to get the cement being processed. Mr. Gajigo is right. There is no cement factory in the Gambia. We know that Gazem used to be there, but Gazem used to import some of these things and then process it in Gambia. That's not owning a factory. I mean, so the government need to prioritize these things. You have to look. I'm engaged in construction in the Gambia regularly, constantly, or spending so much money every year. It's so expensive. I can't finish the apartment construction that I've been doing.
Is it that you are having shortage or you are having huge prices? What are you experiencing?
I mean, it's both. A shortage increases the prices. So if we go now, the prices are increased very, very heavily. And as a result of what? It's either holding, the businessmen are holding, the supplies in order to increase the price, or they just maximizing their profit.
Well, government was saying that the prices are still at 380 something, less than $400.
That's a lot of money for cement. I mean, we used to buy it for $250. Now they're almost $400. That is expensive.
Oh, no, it's over that.
Your experience.
Over 450.
Over 450 in some.
In URR, it's around 450.
Wow, maybe we'll have to do some survey and see.
Yeah, and construction and mosque over there too. You've seen the mosque there, some of this work that we've been doing. Mr. Gajigo is aware of some of the projects that we're doing.
Yes.
Exactly.
The provinces, it's more because there are transportation costs when you go to the provinces.
Of course,
right?
of course.
So it's more expensive. You can perhaps get cement from Senegal and you to come through Wellingara and you bring it to Basse.
Which is
right?
bit closer and cheaper.
So the government need to prioritize some of the things that they are doing, or get out of the way completely and allow the private sector, to work on these things. I mean, but again, obviously they're going to call a press conference and start defending themselves without data. I mean, you focus on data a lot. Go out there and then do some surveys and see how much cement costs. The rainy season is coming. Construction is a major driving, economic driver in the Gambia, and the government need to prioritize it. And obviously, ferries were broken. So if any truck came through the ferry, you would not be able to cross.
Yep.
At the ports, I mean, how long does it take you to clear the containers at the ports?
1 month.
We know all these things are bottleneck. I mean, the government is simply, it's just, they are not prioritizing the right things. That's my take. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Demba Balde. That was my colleague, Demba Balde. You heard him. They are involved in projects. So we have, we have just 10 more minutes to go. And there's still so much for us to discuss. One of the most important topics is that World Bank last week said that the Gambia's GDP grew by 5.3% last year in 2023, up from 4.9% in 2022. Yeah, and this is what they said. This boost comes from strong performance in agriculture, thanks to better rains, improved farming methods, and increased investments. The statement adds that for the country to keep this momentum, its latest economic update recommends a shift from low-value tourism to a dynamic private sector. Key areas for improvement include stabilizing fiscal and debt management, boosting revenue collection, investing in infrastructure, and strengthening regional trade. Sometimes I feel people don't really understand these terminologies. This is me now speaking. Yeah, we've heard what they are saying, World Bank, that we are doing very well. But what's your reaction to this? How well are we doing? Is the growth going to, because they mentioned agriculture in there as one of the drivers for this growth. Where is all this growth coming? Can you explain for us?
No, actually, if I wish people can talk a bit more about press statements from ADB, from World Bank, from IMF. These organizations, when they do their press release, they have to quote it in a diplomatic language. But if you listen very carefully and read between the lines, this statement is actually a major indictment of the country. It is saying that the growth was 5.3%, right? And driven mainly by what? Strong rains. Now think about that. This is agriculture depends on many things, right? And a lot of those things there are things that are under the control of the government and things that are not under the control of the government. The one thing that is not under the control of the government is what is actually driving the growth. What is that telling you about the role of the government? It's like the dog that hasn't barked. In other words, if the government had done successful policy implementation that led to growth, they would have highlighted it. What is here? The deafening silence about the positive role of the government in improving growth or be responsible for the growth is what they are trying to tell you is that the government hasn't done anything here to account for the growth we've experienced. I went through the breakdown. What are the three sectors, which ones are contributing and how much? You have the primary sector, which is agriculture.
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
You have industry, you have services. Almost all the contribution in growth come from primary, which is agriculture. But that is driven by what? Rainfall. Industry sector, negative growth. The service sector, minuscule, tiny growth. So the whole, if you look at the contribution to growth, it's all about one natural aspect on which the government has no role. The one where government actually has a role to play in terms of industrial policy, in terms of proper taxation, in terms of regional trade, which is industry, which is very relevant to what we are talking about here. Regional trade is what? What is the big example of it? Cement being imported from Senegal. What is the biggest component of our industrial activity that the World Bank, in that report, they highlighted one subsect of industries?
Construction.
Construction. And what is the biggest component of that input? Cement. So when you read these reports carefully and read between the lines, what they do not say is actually even more important than what they say. You see? So number one, the government could have done, improve very good extension services, irrigation, but in the last budget, allocation of irrigation was zero. Government could have done policies for horticulture, for rice cultivation, and say we have improved yield. None of it. So the policies and the actions that are under the control of the government were absolute failures. What saved was that we had normal rainfalls. And as long as farmers in the Gambia have normal rainfall, they'll do their best. And when they do their best, we get enough harvest.
Because we still have the regular issues of fertilizer, shortages, etc., etc. The secos.
Those are, I mean, the other problem we have, farmers didn't get paid for their groundnut for months. The government went and said, if you sell your groundnut to anyone, you'll even be arrested. You must sell it to the government. Yet, when farmers harvested, the money wasn't enough. Some places in Badi waited for months. The other part also we have to ask is this growth level that the government is jumping about and celebrating, is it higher than expected? No. The IMF team came here last year and released a report earlier this year, and they were projecting a growth of about 5.6. So we actually, 5.3 is lower than what was projected. But the final point I want to stress also is 5.3 GDP growth. Is it good? Is it something to celebrate? It is not. It's actually very low. Because per capita growth is what we should focus on.
Thank you.
And that is 2.9%. 2.9%, let me tell you. Gambia,
what's the difference when we say per capita growth? And some of the people who don't understand all these terminologies, I think it's good for you to just take a minute to explain what is GDP, what is growth, what is per capita growth, so that it will...
So GDP basically is the total output of the economy. But what matters for saying that the economy is growing, what matters is whether people are doing well or not. So when the economy is growing, it's not only growing because things are more is being produced by the same people. It means the number of workers are increasing. So the population growth rate in the Gambia is almost like 2.9% or 8%. So you have to account for the population growth. So when you remove the population growth, then per capita you will find that it's low. So around 2.8 to 2.9% GDP per capita growth is very bad for a poor country. Let me tell you how bad that is.
Where should we be aiming? Because you said World Bank was targeting us for around 5.6.
Should be, or where we shouldn't be. Let me start at where we shouldn't be.
Okay.
Currently, where we are right now, about the per capita growth, about 2.8 to 2.9%. Our income classification is we are a low-income country, which means we have a GDP per capita of less than $1,000. At this level of GDP per capita, if we maintain the same growth rate that we have today, for 25 years, we'll still remain a low-income country. We will not reach the level of a middle-income country. So in other words, a whole generation from today will still remain a poor country. So is that a level of income that we should be happy about or not? Should we be happy about that?
That's a very good question.
We shouldn't be. In fact, if you look at other national development plans, when they are talking about national development plans for the next 4 to 5 years, when they are talking about the growth level they are targeting, is far higher than 5-point-something%. Sometimes they target something that's even close to 10%, because if you want to move Gambia from a low income to a middle income country within 1 generation, you need to have a GDP growth rate that is twice as high as we are having right now, at least. So this low level of GDP growth is nothing to be celebrating about. In fact, it is a bad news. And if you read the press release, when people read it very carefully, especially the bottom part of the press release where they are saying the things we need to do, regional trade, industrial, business enabling environment.
Low value tourism. Our tourism is low value, which
our tourism is the same as it has been since 1970s. The only thing that has changed is we have more people coming, and that happens due to population growth anywhere. But what can you say about us? Is that diversification of services in the country to attract different kinds of tourists? Do we have the tourist season extending over multiple months as opposed to the same set of months each year? The tourism industry in the Gambia is low value, not resilient, and it is just completely anemic. So I don't know what Ahmad Ba did to be giving this promotion to Minister of Lands, but he obviously, apart from hiring relatives there, hasn't done anything in that ministry. As an example of an incompetent serious minister, which is why I started with, I said Ahmad Ba is the one I think of when I think about incompetent and unserious people who are occupying high positions in this government.
Interesting. He felt that he said that he had the full backing of the president today, and he's made a lot of pronouncements today, a lot of revelations that he was fighting corruption in the Ministry of Land. So we will be bringing out some of these very important news in our subsequent programs. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. The wealth of knowledge that you have brought with us. Doctor, let me refer to him in the proper name, sir.
No, thank you very much for having me, Mr. Taylor. I think it's a great program, and I look forward to appearing again. Thank you so much.
You're listening to Straight Talk. We're coming to you live from West Coast Radio 95.3 FM and on Gainako Online News. Make sure next week you go nowhere. Straight Talk, the program to be.